to this presentation today. I'll now share my screen. Share screen. Okay, and I'm sure you can all see it.
Looks great.
Okay, how do I, yeah, there we go. Okay. So as Katie told you, the Avenue 50 studio has been around since 2000. And we started the gallery because so many of artists were not being recognized in the West Side art galleries. They weren't being recognized in museums, by curators or in magazines and print. So we needed a place that was a serious gallery for our artists. And while this was my studio, we had beautiful white walls and a large space. So I decided it would be great to transform this studio into an art space, an art gallery, and we were successful from day one. And I will show you, a little bit of history about Chicano art. So, okay, so what we're going to do in this, what I'm going to do in this presentation is I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Chicano art and how it's had its roots embedded in the political struggles of the 60s and 70s. And it's important to understand where this history came from, because that's what the art is all about. We were fighting in the very beginning for a Chicano identity. We're then going to explore a few of the most impactful arts organizations of the time. We will continue on to some legacy artists. We will go into some exhibitions that the Avenue 50 studio has had. And then I'll end with a few contemporary artists and showing you the continuation of Chicano art and how it has a theme running through it all. My first image here I thought was very significant, apropos for this discussion, Sun Mad Raisins. First of all, this is a silkscreen print done by Esther Hernandez. We're gonna see that silk screens were part of the history, the starting roots of what medium the artist used in the 60s. This piece speaks to two things: the struggle for the farm workers and the rights of the farm workers, and the insecticides and pesticides that were going into the land and into the fruit and on top of the farm workers. And I'm sure a number of you remember the great boycott of the 60s and 70s. And interestingly enough, not only is it a silk screen, which is a traditional form of art for the Chicano community, but it also uses the calavera, the skeleton. It dresses up the skeleton to express what issues, what problems are going on in our communities. This is also historic, the use of the skeleton. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the relationship between Chicanos and Cuba. Fidel Castro was fighting against Batista in Cuba. He was exiled. He fled into Mexico, where he met Che Guevara. And there they continued to organize the revolution. In Mexico, I'm sure he met with a number of other revolutionaries and also publishers and printmakers, and where he got his connections to help support the revolution back at home. When Cuba finally became a country of its own independence, the Organization of American States, which is an organization of all the countries throughout the Americas, North America, Central and South America, they were all against Cuba. and they wanted to expel Cuba from its membership. The only country that maintained its diplomatic relations with Cuba was Mexico, because they were developing a very strong relationship. Mexico saw Cuba as this little island, the David and Goliath, fighting the oppression of an outside force. Mexico had gone through its revolution in 1910, fighting the influence, the oppression of an outside force, the Spaniards. So they felt a real affinity with Cuba. I'm going to show you in the next slide that a very well-known publisher, Blas Venegas Arroyo, his grandson, Arsacio Venegas, was a big supporter of the Cuban Revolutionary, and it was Arsacio who began the printing of the Cuban political posters, the silk screening. Here's one of the posters on the left, and that says, "Sin las mujeres no hay revolución." Without women, there is no revolution. This is significant. This poster was extremely well known in its time, and it's significant because the artists were so involved in the Cuban Revolution. They were the ones who did the designing of all of these wonderful posters, and Cuba still has a very wonderful history when it comes to the arts. It's very strong in its arts, and so is Mexico. So what we have on the left is a broadside. A broadside is a printed flyer, a printed poster, a flyer mostly, that has an image and text. And this was printed by Blas Venegas, the grandfather, in their struggles against I think it was Porfirio Diaz, I can't pronounce his first name, and their struggles for independence. They were very, very progressive. Blas Venegas was extremely progressive. This says Calavera de los Bravos. It's the brave skeleton, the brave calavera, and they're going up against the Ku Klux Klan. They're brave because they're being killed, but they're still surging forward. Onward. So what were some of the world and the national events that influenced the Chicano movement? It was the era of the 60s that was dominated by the Vietnam War and the civil rights movement. And we know that the mainstream white world focused mostly on the Vietnam War, while the Southern Black communities were standing up against segregation and racism. Both of these struggles had a profound effect on the Chicano community. And during the 60s, the Chicano community stood up and started fighting for their own civil rights. This poster on the right, another silkscreen poster, was done by an organization called the Mexican American Liberation Art Front, and they were very progressive. They were very revolutionary for their time. They were based in Oakland, and silkscreen posters were what they did. They also did some murals, but their main focus was on silkscreen posters. And I just wanted to give a shout out to the members of this collective, Malaquias Montoya, who I believe is the artist who crafted the image of the profiled face that looks very much like Malaquias's artistic form. Another artist, Manuel Hernandez, also Esteban Villa, and Renee Yanes, who has since passed away. So the culmination of the Chicano Moratorium, the culmination of the Chicano struggle really happened on August 29th, 1970. On that day, 200,000 to 300,000 people came out to attend this Chicano Moratorium, mostly Chicanos, but that's a tremendous amount of people in one demonstration. And the activists of the time, very progressive to this, they built this broad-based coalition, which included the Catholic Church. It included all levels of people who wanted to get involved to support the civil rights struggles of the Chicano community. The main focus was to call on the government to bring back the Chicano youth who were being disproportionately shot and killed in Vietnam, along with our Black community young members, because we were saying we're working for the U.S., for fighting for freedom for the U.S., yet when our soldiers come home, they face discrimination right here in the United States. They face the discrimination of bad housing, poor schools, lack of adequate jobs. And it was an unfair balance here. At this moratorium, this was the march where the police shot into a building, into the Silver Dollar Saloon, and shot one of the most important writers in the Chicano community, Ruben Salazar. And some people claim it was an assassination, and some say it was random. I don't know. But this, the violence perpetrated upon the Chicano community, upon the people who came out to this demonstration, effectively quieted and oppressed more street demonstrations, which, by the way, I was there, and it was, when I was there, it was very peaceful until the police started marching in, and then the person I was with said, "We need to get out of here because it's going to start getting violent," and we left. Let's see the next slide. So I wanted to give you a list of some of the Chicano arts organizations that were working towards social justice during this period of time. The Goes Gallery opened up in East LA. It was the very first art gallery ever for Chicano artists. And that opened in 1969 in East LA. They eventually started expanding into mural making, but at that time, there was still a struggle within the Chicano community, or there was the beginnings of this discussion about who is a Chicano, what is a Chicano, and what are our roots. So Goes had their focus was mostly in Spain. They had this very Spanish feel to them. If you walked into their gallery, it had statues of Don Quixote. It had a suit of armor, the dark wooden walls. It felt very Espanol. And this was the struggle, because they were saying, well, we're Spanish. And the young activists were saying, we are indigenous. We were born here. We are not Spanish. And others were saying, well, we're Spanish and we're indigenous. So there was a big struggle of who are Chicano people. Chicano Art Center opened same year, 1969. They first opened on La Cienega Boulevard, then moved to East Los Angeles, and then moved into my neighborhood here in Highland Park. And during this period of time, the Department of Cultural Affairs opened up a program for muralism. The Chicano Arts Center started to do murals throughout the city. Their job was to help gang members try to get out of the situation they're in and give them a trade. If you're a mural painter, you could make money as a muralist. You could make money as a house painter. You could make money as a sign painter. But we want to help give these young people an opportunity to have a trade. Plaza de la Raza, they opened in 1970. Their focus was education, arts education in Northeast LA. They expanded to music and theater. They have an art gallery in the boathouse. And by the way, Plaza de la Raza is at Lincoln Park, and Lincoln Park has this beautiful lake in the middle of it. It's a very beautiful location for events, and but its focus is on education. It was given to Plaza to actually do an educational program. Public Art Council. I'm going to talk a little bit about it later, but 1973, CAP was a statewide organization, and the Malef artists that I spoke about a few slides ago, they were part of the Public Arts Council, which was kind of a union, a guild of Chicano arts organizations who were very progressive across the state of California. Artists, all artists, theater people, and many, many poets and writers. Most of some of the most important Chicano artists came through Public Art Council, came through PAC, or CAP rather. And at that time, they were actually emerging artists. And those emerging artists today are legacy artists. Spark, I love Spark because Spark was founded by a woman. Her name, Judy Baca. Spark is in Venice. They are still in the same building where they first opened. It's the Venice Old Jail, a beautiful building. And their focus was definitely muralism. They got a contract from the city of Los Angeles, citywide murals, to hire muralists to paint the walls. And I wanted to pull up this quote by David Alfaro Siqueiros. "We repudiate so-called easel art and all such art which springs from ultra-intellectual circles, for it is essentially aristocratic. We hail the monumental expression of art because such art is public property." When he talks about monumental expression of art, those are the murals. And so why were Chicanos doing murals? Well, for a number of reasons, because we were looking back to Mexico for inspiration. And the three great Mexican muralists, Diego Rivera, Jose Orozco, and Siqueiros, painted the history of the Mexican people on the walls of mainly Mexico City and Guadalajara. In the United States, schools in the Chicano community did not talk about Chicano history. So young people had no idea who they were. They only knew, the history books were written by those in charge, and it didn't include the others of us who were underserved. So muralists, the Chicano artists, about the Spark mural to serve and protect by Noe Olivas. And if you look at who she painted, we're not talking about the police here, we're talking about the Black Panthers. She's saying that is the community that is protecting us and is serving us. And if you look to the upper left, you'll see the hooded white sheets of the Klan. Streetscapers, East Los Streetscapers that formed in 1977. They were part of the Goes Gallery. David Botello was part of the Goes Gallery and used to exhibit at the Goes Gallery. But him and Wayne Healy got together and they decided to form their own mural company called East Los Streetscapers. And if you go throughout the east side of Los Angeles and actually throughout Los Angeles, you will see many of the streetscapers murals decorating our walls. And it speaks to the history of the Chicano community and contemporary artists and contemporary sports athletes. They're very much about talking to the world, exhibiting to the world who the Chicano people are. Could you forward? Thank you. I didn't speak about SelfHelp Graphics in the other slide because SelfHelp was a little different from the others. They were founded at the very, very beginning, at the same time that the Goa's Gallery was around. They opened up as a printmaking studio to produce silkscreen posters in the tradition that came down from Cuba. The difference between SelfHelp and the others is that SelfHelp had an ideology. They had a purpose and a goal, and that was to talk to the artists of East Los Angeles and have them discuss what is Chicano art and who is a Chicano artist. And so what Sister Karen, Franciscan nun, was the leader. What Sister Karen wanted the artists in East LA to do is to take their eyes away from Europe and look at Mexico and see what's being produced in Mexico, where our roots are from, Mexico. And in particular, look at what is being produced by the people at the bottom, not the well-educated, institutionalized artists. Remember the Siqueiros quote, but actually the people at the bottom, and they were the folk artists. And so if we look at Mexican folk art, we'll see that it is very colorful, using primary colors to color everything. And so that's why you'll see so much color coming out of the Chicano community, because it has its roots in the folk arts of Mexico. If you look at this float, this is one of the,
sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
If you look at this float, you will see that it has something that I spoke about, which is the skull. You'll see the little skull face up there on the left with a little Mexican hat. And then in the front of this car, you see another skull face. And this car was decorated and designed by artist Leo Limon to lead the Day of the Dead procession down what was then Brooklyn Avenue and now is Cesar Chavez. Day of the Dead actually found its beginnings at SelfHelp Graphics. It was brought to SelfHelp by a Mexican artist by the name of Carlos Bueno. And Sister Karen was looking for a community gathering, a community event that would honor who Chicanos and Mexicans are. And Carlos Bueno came up with this fabulous idea about starting Dia de los Muertos here in Los Angeles. In the very beginnings of the celebration, there were just the artists who were involved. And then it just caught on and grew until we're at the point today where just about every arts organization in the East Side does a Dia de los Muertos. Dia de los Muertos has its roots with the people right at the ground floor, who would go to their ancestors, go to the cemetery to where their ancestors were buried. They would clean it up, and then they would decorate their plots, and with little altars everywhere around the cemetery. I don't know if any of you have been to Mexico, to any of the cemeteries there. They're very beautiful during Dia de los Muertos. They're decorated, they're all decorated. And they were like little mini altars everywhere. And so we took that tradition coming from the masses of people rather than the institutions and brought that to Los Angeles. Next slide. So I want to talk about some of the artists. We have a legacy artist, Margaret Garcia. Margaret she is one of the, I guess you could say, one of the oh, what do you call them when you graduate from a university? You are a graduate. Okay, I'll just say she's a graduate of self-help graphics. You can see that she uses primary colors. Primary, you see red and you see yellow and you see purple and blue. And what she said to me, she never uses black. It's too dark. You have to incorporate blue or purple or brown into your blacks in order to make it flow with the other colors in the painting. She paints the people around her, the people she loves, the people she knows. The woman on the right is Lisa Flores. She is she's a rock, Chicano rock singer. And on the right is Carlos Santana. Next slide. Frank Romero, amazing artist. He is one of our legacy artists. He's one of the pioneers. Frank calls himself an American artist because whenever he tried to get into a gallery on the West Side, they told him he was a Chicano artist. And Chicano art is folk, it is provincial, it is uneducated. I mean, think of all the negative terms you can call a piece of art. And so he said, I'm not a Chicano artist. I am an American artist. I was born here. I paint here. I have my roots here. He has, I wanted to show to me, some of his more important paintings. The painting on the left is called The Closing Down, or The Shutting Down of Whittier Boulevard. When I was growing up, our young high school boys and girls used to go cruising. There were two places to go cruising, where you get into your car and you just drive up and down a particular street. One of them was Whittier Boulevard. One of them was Van Nuys Boulevard in the Valley. And the kids would get into the car and they would just cruise back and forth and just look at each other and comment on the cars, comment on who was in the cars. And then if they attracted an eye of the opposite sex, they'd pull the car over and then they'd talk and maybe exchange telephone numbers. So this is a tradition that was started in the Chicano community. Because there was not enough money to buy a brand new car, people had to buy these old, what they call bombs, these old bombs. And they would paint them beautifully. And they would put, they would tuck and roll inside and really fix them up. And you could think of it like they were like a male peacock trying to show their beauty to attract women, right? So when they drove down the street, they would get the notice of women. This is, like what birds do. And so down Whittier Boulevard comes all these lowriders. And this took place for, I don't know how long the cruising took place on Whittier Boulevard, but there was a crackdown. And here in this picture, what you see all the lowrider, all the cars. You see on the right, you see a barrier with the police who look very much like Texas Rangers, and they're carrying their rifles in their hands. You see a man on a horse who's carrying a spear. He looks like he's a conquistador. You see on the wall, the Virgen de Guadalupe, here to protect the community. And what the police did was shut down this actually very harmless form of entertainment. It wasted a lot of gas, that's for sure, but back then gas was pennies, right? And so this is called the closing down, the shutting down of Whittier Boulevard, preventing people from gathering, taking away their civil rights from gathering. The image on the right, bless you. The image on the right is the arrest of the paleteros. Paleteros are popsicle vendors who were made out to be criminals. They were vendors, street vendors. And you see their little carts there on the upper right. You see the police cars there You see the headlights on this family of vendors. You see the police in could be riot gear, holding their guns pointed directly at this family of vendors. And Frank has a little bit of a strange sense of humor. Maybe you would call it black sense of humor. He has the family holding their hands up, and what's in each hand? Paletas, popsicles. So they're raising their hands with popsicles in their hands. And he wanted to make a comment about this injustice, how people are trying to make a living, and because they might not have a signed piece of paper, they were treated as criminals. He makes a heavy-duty statement lightheartedly, relatively lightheartedly, just like he did with the closing of Whittier Boulevard. Next slide, please. Chaz Bojorquez, another graduate of SelfHelp Graphics. Chaz was a graffiti artist who would, the same use of the word, he would bomb the walls. Many of us, it made many of us angry, and many of us saying, that's a beautiful sign. Chaz started out in his 20s, just being a Chicano art, just being a graffiti artist. Then he studied calligraphy with a Chinese master, calligraphic master. So he learned how to use the brush in a more fluid kind of way. And he is now one of our top-notch Chicano artists. And if you look at this beautiful piece he did on the right, you could see the influence of the Chinese in his artwork. Interestingly enough, he is very well known in Japan. They love him in Japan. He's not as well known here in the US. So he is credited with bringing the Chicano Cholo graffiti style into, well, you could say into mainstream art. He doesn't get that many shows even today. Next slide. This is Gilbert Mago Lujan. I love Gilbert. He has passed away a number of years ago. He was a sculptor, a muralist, and a painter. And you could see the use of the primary colors here. You can also see how he draws in almost a cartoonish kind of way, speaking about who he honors and respects, and that is the community, the people in his community. And he is not going to paint in an academic style for the people in his community. So he talks about what is going on in his community, the importance of the car, and you could see this car that he's really tricked up, the woman on the right, and then on the left, you can see these two people are meeting in a pool hall, it looks like to me. He also liked to hearken to his Aztec roots, and you could feel that indigenousness in the faces that we see. He was one of the founders of Los Four, that consisted of Carlos Almaraz, Beto de la Rocha, Frank Romero, and himself, Mago. He even had a tricked out car that was brought into LACMA and presented in one of the galleries in the museum. And those of us who know about lowriders at that time were like, oh my God, this is fabulous, because now we're honoring the artist who actually produced these beautiful looking cars. Next slide, please. I'm going to show you a few of the exhibits that the Avenue 50 has put together. Make 'em All Mexican by Linda Vallejo. This was curated by Dr. Carrie Mary Davalos. She was a professor at Loyola Marymount on the west side. Karen Davalos asked me to go with her to Linda Vallejo's studio to talk about the show that was going to be presented at the gallery. And Linda was bringing us all her work, the different series she had done, and we're sitting there trying to imagine this exhibition. And then she brought out a little figurine, a porcelain figurine that was white and dressed in white, right? And she said, when I was younger, my mother used to take me into these stores, and they always had these beautiful little princesses with gorgeous dresses, and all the people were always white, porcelain white. And I always thought of myself as ugly because I didn't see myself in this work. So today, in today's world, I decided I was going to buy one of those figurines, and I was going to paint her brown like I am. And after I did that, I felt such pride. I wanted to go back and buy more of these porcelain figurines, and I wanted to make them all Mexican. And Karen, Mary, and I just looked at each other and we said, oh my God, that is the title of your show right there. Make them all Mexican. She wanted to have the image of herself on these porcelain figurines. And so she did exactly that, went out and bought these figurines and painted them brown, and all shades of brown. And then she went on to take images of stars and musicians, and she made a brown Marilyn Monroe, and if you look on the right, you see a couple there wearing really very fine clothing from like the 1700s, and they look like plantation owners, and she made them brown and brought them in to display them in our exhibit. And this was one of our most powerful shows. And this show traveled to so many galleries. She got so many reviews, and eventually she won an award for one of her sculptures. And all because of that declarative statement, make them all Mexican. She was outraged that she couldn't find herself in these little sculptures. Next slide, please. Resurrected Histories, Voices from the Chicano Arts Collectives of Highland Park. This was a show we had in 2012. We were funded by California Cal Humanities. When we opened up our doors at the gallery, many of these artists, Richard Duardo being one of them, came to us and said, you need to do a show on all the CAP artists, because there's a lot of CAP artists here in Highland Park. And so we started doing research, and we said, this is a fabulous project. Applied for a grant from CalHum and received money to resurrect this history that was almost forgotten about the arts organizations here in Highland Park. This is CAP, the Council of Public Art. They did two things: silk screening, continuing the tradition, and mural making, continuing that tradition. And here is Richard Duardo silk screening the Zoot Suit poster at the Concilio, I'm sorry, at the Centro de Arte Popular. He has since passed away, but I picked up one of his more, to me, more significant pieces that he put together. He was strongly influenced by Andy Warhol, a silk screen of Angela Davis, and he quoted her on this silk screen, and it says, radical simply means grasping things at the root. Next slide, please. From a whisper to a roar, women artists charting their own course. This was a show produced by Women's Caucus for Art and curated by Avenir Nelson. I chose this slide because I really was impressed by what artist Noe Bustamante did for Tierra y Libertad, first in a series of personal protections. She went back into history, and she researched powerful women in Mexican history, and she said no one is giving credit to these women who joined the soldiers in the revolution, who went out to the front with them, to feed them, to wash their clothes, to cut their hair, take care of them when they got hurt. No one gave them much credit, and they were known as the Adelitas. And so she said, they didn't have guns, these women, they couldn't protect themselves. So I wanted to design a dress that would protect them from the bullets that were flying. And she found this material. It's a mail. I think mail is what they used under the suit of armor. And she formed this dress. She made this dress. I'm not sure if she did it herself. I'm almost positive she gave it to a seamstress. Very hard to work with that material. And she shot at the dress. And if you look behind the dress, you see a pillow with a couple of holes. And above that are bullets. And she was testing to see what this dress could withstand. And I thought I wanted to see her whole series on this. This is just really a beautiful tribute to the women, the Adelitas from the Mexican Revolution. Next slide, please. Another declaration that came to me by curator Sybil Venegas. Sybil is an art historian. She was a chair of the Chicano Studies Department at East LA City College. And she came walking in and she said, I've been listening to the news and what the discourse that is going on regarding Mexicans that's coming out of the mouth of one of the presidential candidates. And she said, I'm really upset because he doesn't understand the history of the Southwest. And didn't he understand that this used to be Mexico? And I said, Sybil, that is absolutely the title of your show. This used to be Mexico. And she was thrilled. She was so happy that she started working on it immediately. And it was such a popular show that artists were knocking on our doors trying to get into this show because they wanted to participate in this exhibition. One of those artists that knocked on our doors was Ricardo Duffy, Irish Mexican. And he said, I need to be in this show. I have a piece that speaks exactly to that. And this is his piece. And if we look at what he did this at SelfHelp Graphics. It's a monotype. What we see corn on both sides of this figure. Mexicans are known as the people of the corn. There is the rooster. We have Cesar Chavez, the farm workers symbol. We have Dolores Huerta holding up a huelga sign. We have an Aztec jade mask. And above, on the crown of this mask, we see farm workers protesting. We also see the color of the Mexican flag, red, white, and green. And he said, all of this is what makes up Chicanos. It was made in East LA. And I thought it was very appropriate. Showed it to Sybil, and Sybil said, yes, absolutely, that goes into the show. Next video, please. I mean, next slide, please. Another show we did was called Give Me Shelter. I was washing the dishes one morning and heard the Rolling Stones song, Give Me Shelter. Some of the lyrics go, a storm is threatening my very life today. If I don't get some shelter, I'm gonna fade away. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. That is the name, that will be our next exhibition that had to do with gentrification and its associate displacement and the homelessness that was raging throughout this city. These people were thrown onto the streets. They were broken. And Elmer Guevara, a very young artist who is right now going to Hunter College. He was studying at Long Beach, Cal State Long Beach. He's getting his master's at Hunter College right now. I invited him to be in the show, and he produced this beautiful painting, very large painting, 60 by 72 inches. And you see people broken on the streets. He skewed the canvas, the composition, to where you feel totally off kilter, off the ground. Everything is broken up. Yet he has hope. He's a young man who has hope, that you'll see over the shoulder of this person lying on the ground. You see the blue skies. And then if you look, above the broken bridge, you see that life is in order, and everything is going to be okay in the end. So Elmer still has hope, and maybe he's trying to share his hope with these people who are abandoned on the streets. Next slide, please. Immigration 101, artists speak out. We were inundated with news articles on the radio about the horrible situation with immigrants. And I was disturbed by that. And so I said, we have to do an exhibit that talks to who are immigrants in this country. And many, many, many of us are immigrants. Some of us forced immigrants, but some of us environmental immigrants, people running away from crime, from poverty, and then just people wanting to immigrate to the United States. So I went out, and not only did we ask Mexican artists, but Belarusian artists came forward, and Polish artists, and a German artist came forward. And we wanted to show that immigrants are all colors, not just one, and that all of us pretty much have the same desire, and that's to go someplace safe and to be able to make a living for themselves and their families. Narciso Martinez, when we were putting the show together, we were already installing, and an artist came running up to us and said, you have to put this piece in your show by Narciso Martinez. If you do not put this work in, you're never going to be able to show him again. So we moved everything aside and put Narciso's piece on the back wall. And this piece was done on cardboard fruit and vegetable boxes. He calls this a family portrait. And what we see is farm workers carrying their load, but they are not, but we don't really see who they are. They're in the dark. And we see a ladder going up, and we see fruit trees on both sides. We also see this figure on the left wearing a beautiful gown. She almost could look like the Statue of Liberty in a sense. But if you look at her face, that is the face of a skull. That is a skull. So what is Narciso trying to say in this piece? And I'll tell you the way that I interpret it. That is the plantation owner right there, who's creating, behind her is blackness, creating hardship and at times death for the farm workers. The farm workers are left to be invisible and unknown. They are the ones that are helping this person to helping the plantation owner get ahead in their wealthy world. He is the son of farm workers. He himself was a farm worker. And if we look at that ladder going up, what we see is that Narciso has hope too. He has hope because we look at that where the ladder ends, there is some bright light there. Even though you do still see what possibly could be the boxes, there is hope for these people. And there's even a little bit of, well, the box kind of opens up in this man's face, but that's intentional to create that there's some hope for these people. Anyway, Narciso has been picked up by Charlie James Gallery in downtown LA. He's now part of their stable. Next slide, please. Today's contemporary artists. I love this portrait. Look at the richness of this portrait. All the colors this artist uses. When I first saw this, I just wanted to bow down to it. It was so beautifully rendered. Ricardo Estrada, he was for many years a roofer. And on his part-time, he painted. And totally under-recognized. Fabulous artist. We had a show with him and he sold out. First time we've ever sold out the works. Everybody came in here wanting to buy his work because look at his ability. Look at that. This is his mother, actually. And if you read the title of this and a little bit about it, I'm going to try to pronounce these words without butchering them too much. Mictlantecuhtli. So Mictlantecuhtli is an Aztec god of the dead, usually portrayed with a skull face, along with his wife, Mitequihuatli, who ruled the underworld. Here's a portrait of his mother, and they both have passed away. And here is his mother and father entwined on the right. Beautiful homage to his mother. I love this piece. Next slide, please. Again, on gentrification and displacement. Mio Stevens Gandara did a silkscreen print over at SelfHelp Graphics called Chavez Ravine. What she does is parallel the history of Chavez Ravine, the displacement, with the present issues of displacement and gentrification. And as I was reviewing the slides this morning, I remembered what I had heard in the news this morning about SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, and I wondered how many people were displaced out of their homes and ended up in downtown LA because of these giant-sized stadiums that, yes, they might cater to all of us who love sports, but I feel like good luck if you can afford a ticket. Next slide, please. And I'm going to end with this one. Noe Olivas. This piece is called Dear Juan. What we see is a lowrider bike that has a dolly, bike parts, burlap, carpet, milk crate, sleeping Mexican steel perfume bottle. I have been looking for that since I chose this slide, and a mirror stand. Noe was born into a family of auto mechanics. He grew up in a garage. And so much of his work deals with the things that you would find in a garage. And he'll take, I don't even know what the names of some of these parts are, but he'll take parts and he'll recreate them in a drawing. He will take a rag that's filled with grime and oil and all kinds of greases and fluid oils from the cars, and he would recreate that in a drawing, and they were beautiful. He saw beauty where I see grime, right? A dirty, grimy auto rag. He saw beauty in that because that's who he is, and he's saying, I am proud of my roots. I am proud of who I am. He is also hearkening to the tradition of lowrider cars and making them beautiful. Yes, they use carpets, and they definitely use a mirror underneath the car. And if you've ever been to a lowrider car show, you will see that they place a mirror under the car to show you how it's not just surface beauty, but we're beautiful inside too. And we're going to show you how well we take care of our possessions. And so he's honoring those lowrider car painters who, to this day, have really not gotten their due. So that is my very last slide. And I know I didn't go enough into the arts, and I'm sorry about that. But I hope you enjoyed it.
Kathy, thank you so much. Wow. You have a couple of questions and comments. So I don't know if you can see them. The first one is to ask you to define Chicanx and Latin. How do you say that when it has the X at the end? Maybe
it's easier to say Chicanx.
Okay.
And Latinx. Latinx. It's hard to say. I have a hard time too. Let me see the questions. Is it in the chat? Is that where it is? Okay.
Define the Chicanx and Latinx.
Okay.
Term.
Okay. So Chicanos are very proud people. They fought hard for the term Chicano. And now Chicanx. They are people who are of Mexican descent and American US descent. They were born here, but they are not accepted by Mexicans because Mexicans don't think they're Mexican enough, and not accepted by Americans because they're not American. So that's why the term Chicano came about, to talk about this group of people known as, in today's world, Chicanx. Latinx, that's the rest of us. Everyone who was, maybe you're Puerto Rican, maybe you're Dominican, you know, maybe you are Spanish and you are of a Latin root, maybe you're Brazilian and you came to the United States, your parents came here and you were born here. So you are Latinx. But even those who immigrated are known as Latinx. They used to be called, way back when the Goes Gallery was in operation, they used to be called Spanish. We would call ourselves Spanish. We were very Spanish. And then it became Hispanic. And then, you know, then we started to gain this consciousness to say, no, we're not. We're not from Europe, we're from here. So it now has morphed into Latinx. And I'm telling you, there's still a debate on all of those terms.
And anyone, just feel free to unmute and ask your questions. I got a private comment saying this is so good and informative. Thank you for sharing this opportunity with us. Beautiful artwork and so educational. So wow, you got some other comments in the chat. I see a question about the KKK and whether the Klan was active against Mexican Americans.
I'm not a history buff on the KKK. Maybe somebody knows them better than I do. But I think they were also in Texas. And I think you will find some of the Texas Rangers were Klan members. And I know that Texas Rangers, they wrought a lot of damage on border Mexican cities and villages. And there's one in particular, and I'm sorry, I don't know the name of this massacre, but the Texas Rangers came in and massacred the men in the village, and the women and children ran across the border into Mexico. So, and this was, I guess during the early 1800s, I'm not sure, or late 1800s, I'm not sure. So Mexico would have known about the Klan, and that's why you have Blas Venegas talking about it in Mexico, talking about the Klan and the oppression of people of color, Black in particular, and Mexicans in the Southwest. And that's all I know. I mean, I don't know much more than that.
I think Helene, you had a question, and then I'll address another one from the chat.
Yeah, thank you. This was amazing. You've exposed me to numerous. I made notes of about 13 artists that I had actually never heard of. Never heard of.
Okay, right.
So I thank you. I thank you for that. And I may do a program about this. I'm going to take a look at some. I'm assuming all their art is online.
Yes, that's where I got much of it online.
And I can copy it. I can download it.
They would love it. They would.
Yeah, this is really quite wonderful. Really, would you quickly give me your definition of Chicano art?
Okay. My definition, is more inclusive.
Please.
Because I'm a Puerto Rican who came from New York when I was young. And so when I came to California, I looked at the Mexicans here and I said, wow, they're the same color as me. They speak the same language as my family. They have rice and beans, like they eat very similar foods to us. They have music that's similar, and they're very loyal to the family. And so I said, I can really identify with these people here in California since I've lost my Puerto Rican-ness when we left New York. And so I feel like I am I've grown up in the Chicano community. And so my definition of Chicano is much more inclusive. And many people, this is the struggle of this term, there are those who say, yes, if you've been involved in the Chicano movement, which is, you see the arts, it's political, and you saw the gallery shows, it's political, it's, you know, hand to hand, you know, mano a mano with the Chicano art movement. They should be part of the Chicano community here. But then you have the ones who are a little more nationalist, and they'll say, no, it's only those who are Mexican and American. So my definition is that if you have,
inclusive, yeah.
If you have been doing this, the themes of the Chicano community, and you are a person of Latinx heritage, grown up in the Southwest, formerly, you know, otherwise known in the Chicano community as Aztlán, you are a Chicana.
Okay.
Or Chicanix.
Thank you very much.
And if you need any contact information for any of the artists, you know, feel free to reach out to me.
I will have no problem doing that. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you so much for whetting my appetite for more. This was so wonderful, and I really want to learn more, and I want to see more, and it's been great. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. And it's hard to find. You know, I look at all the art openings throughout the galleries in the city, and you don't find a lot. It's hard to find a show with Frank Romero or with Margaret. Margaret right now is showing up in Ventura, at the museum in Ventura. But John Valadez, I wish I could show you all of their work. John Valadez is a pastel artist, photorealistic, but also surreal.
Wow.
In his content of his work. He is fabulous. And I didn't include him. And some of the others, Irene Cervantes, definitely indigenous in her roots. And there's so many others that I just didn't have time to include. But you do, you know, if you'd like to know the names of some of the other ones who I haven't included, please let me know and I will give you their names and maybe their websites if I can find it.
And
Is your gallery actually open now?
Yeah, the next question. Are you open? What are you exhibiting? And how can we come and visit?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that question. We are open right now with the ending of a show, and it was our art auction show. 20th anniversary, because, you know, we opened in 2020. We actually, 21 going on 22 years, but that sounds funny, you know, so we said our big bash, 20th anniversary. We just came off of that fundraiser, and so there's a few artworks left on the wall that we're waiting for the buyers to come in and pick up. And in 2 weeks, we're going to have a Dia de los Muertos show, and with the poet, cultural bearer Consuelo Flores. She is curating a show with a particular theme, and that is community remembers. Dia de los Muertos, a community remembers, a community heals. It's talking about those who have passed away during this period of time, not necessarily with COVID, but because your loved one might have passed away, you couldn't go into the hospital to see them. Remember that horrible period of time when the nurses were finally, you know, they finally figured out, and I'm not saying this in a negative way, to hold up the camera so that people could see their loved ones and say goodbye to them, you know, horrible. So she wanted to do Dia de los Muertos is about a group mourning. Everybody comes out and you honor, it's like a memorial. You honor those who have passed away. That's why they say it's, Dia de los Muertos is a, oh gosh, how they say it? Well, it's like a celebration of life. That's what they say, a celebration of life, because we're not sitting there, you know, we're not sitting there, although we cry, crying and mourning and wailing, but we are actually talking about this person and others and what they gave to us, what joy they gave. And so that's why we put all their little favorites, little bottles of whatever they drink, you know, on the altar, you know, pictures of them. And so you're sharing their spirit during this period of time. And it's a beautiful, beautiful celebration that I hope other cultures embrace more. But that's what we have. And then after that, it's just going to be a community in December, November, December. It's just a gift show from everyone in the community. And if there are any artists here and you are a crafter and want to share your crafts, you would send a little email to the Arroyo Arts Collective, who is organizing the craft show. Christmas gifts for everyone. Affordable Christmas gifts, which they say shop local. So that's what's happening towards the end of this year, or to finalize the year.
When is the opening of the Dia de los Muertos show?
That is not this weekend, the following, I think it's the 16th.
Okay.
We're still debating. I mean, I just read this morning that they're thinking of doing away with the masks mandate, yeah. Right? I didn't read it. I just read the headline.
I just read it today.
I just read it today too, right? So I'm trying to think, do people still feel safe about coming out and being indoors? No. You know what?
I'll have my mask on.
Yeah, well, we did a series called Mask Required, and we gave this wonderful watercolor paper to painters, and we printed on the top mask and the bottom required. And then we said to the artists, do something, help the community to understand how important it is to wear the mask. Beautiful, beautiful images that came out from the community. And that's our sign, that mask required when you enter this place. We switch up the artwork every week and say, now it's Edith de Guzman's turn to have her piece on the wall, on the window. So when you come in, you have to wear your mask. It says mask required.
Yeah.
But I would feel better wearing a mask. I'm still debating whether we'll, you know, actually do a call. Please, everybody, come on out, because we had like exhibitions. The openings were like 400 people at our grandest, and I don't want to be around.
Yeah.
One time. So we're not doing. I'm inviting you, but it's not like the whole world. I'm inviting, just word of mouth kind of thing.
Right.
The 16th.
So we have another question about the X at the end of Chicano. You know, why an X, not an O or an A?
Yes, that is a really good question that I failed to respond to, or failed to point out. Because in Spanish, you talk either feminine or masculine, and there are certain words that are feminine or masculine. And so our young people, who are much more progressive than I am right now, our young people said, we don't want that anymore. We don't want to be identified as male, female. It's a male supremacist kind of a part of the language. You put an X and it says it doesn't matter. So Chicanx means everybody. It doesn't, that's why you still will see Chicano, Chicana. And what we had to do at a particular point, we went Chicano, Chicana, Latino, Latina. Yeah. And it was like, that was way too much, you know. So now put the X, means everybody. It means everybody. Maybe they're going to start doing it to some terms like, I think cuarto or la mano should be an X. It's feminine. I don't know. It's everybody's hand, not just a feminine.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording, but once again, let's give Kathy a beautiful round of applause.